Welcome to the Future of Supply Chain, presented by Dynamo. Each episode, we sit down with leaders in the industry as we build the future of supply chain together. Let's get into the show. Here's our host, Santosh Sankar.
Hey, ladies and gents, welcome back to the Future Supply Chain Podcast. I'm your host, Santosh Sankar. Joining me today is Chris Kuntz, VP of Strategic Operations at Augmentir. Welcome, Chris. Great to have you on.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me today.
You know, I would love to open up with, and we're going to jump into this in a bit more detail, but give us kind of the quick 90 seconds on Augmentir.
Yeah, so Augmentir, we're a software company, and what we're doing is solving what we think is the single most important problem in manufacturing, the skilled labor shortage. So we have an AI-powered connected worker platform that helps manufacturing companies onboard workers faster, digitize work, close skills gaps, and optimize safety, quality, and productivity. Our customers really call it like a unified interface for frontline operations. They think of Augmentir as a single interface, like a single pane of glass, that all the workers on the front line, production managers, maintenance, quality, operators, gives them the resources they need to help augment those workers and help them perform at their best and meet critical, safety, quality, and production goals.
And so what's the Chris story? How did you kind of get into the world of manufacturing software, labor management, however you want to describe it?
Yeah, so interestingly, I had a summer job in high school where I worked for a local food and beverage manufacturing company. And obviously at the time that was, to make money. But certainly, I was going for an engineering degree in college. And so I understood some of the inefficiencies associated with frontline workers operating machines, whatever they were doing, maintaining equipment, understood the efficiencies back then, 35 years ago, and realized that there's just a lot of improvement. And so fast forward, I started my professional career as a software developer, worked on a lot of the early embedded technology. So one of the first digital cameras that was out there, and very early on had an opportunity to join a company that was the early days of IoT, the Internet of Things, the industrial Internet of Things. Even before it was called IoT, we were trying to figure out different names for the space. But along the way, so one of the first companies in the industrial IoT space, and along the way, I met the current co-founding team of Augmentir, who had started a company called ThingWorks, trying to revolutionize the IoT space. So they actually ended up acquiring the company that I had here in Rochester, New York. And we helped transform that space, make machines smart and connected. Obviously, manufacturing, critical sector where machines play a key role in production. And the team just got back together again with Augmentir, and we're sort of doing the same from a human angle, right? Making humans, just like we made machines smart and connected. Now we're making humans smart and connected in the manufacturing realm. They've really been underserved by technology. When you think about the last 5, 10, 15 years of digital transformation, Industry 4.0, 5.0, humans are relatively underserved by technology, and we're changing that, and we're helping them get more connected and benefiting the manufacturing companies.
Awesome. Let's dig into the Augmentir solution, right? And almost as if kind of we're trying to express this to a potential customer or interested audience. Which customer profiles is this best for, right? As I'm thinking about our listeners, how do they know, hey, I need to reach out to Chris after I listen to this?
Yeah. So if you have a workforce problem, we're probably the right solution for you, which, I've not yet met a manufacturing company today that doesn't have a workforce or a workforce shortage problem. Certainly in manufacturing, there's many sectors of manufacturing. We play in food and beverage manufacturing, consumer goods, chemical manufacturing, pharmaceutical manufacturing, kind of across the line. But the commonality there is manufacturing environments where humans still play a critical role in production. And so where is that? That's an equipment operation. Even if you have a lights out manufacturing plant, you still have robotics that need to have operators, and they need to have maintenance done to them. So when you think about equipment operations, you think about maintenance, quality, safety, those aspects of manufacturing where humans are not being replaced in the factory. Yet manufacturing companies today face a a dramatic and really challenging skilled labor shortage. And so how can you help augment those individuals with technology to help them perform at their best and reduce some of the safety and quality issues that have come about due to placing unskilled or inexperienced workers on factory lines?
When customers begin an engagement or are first speaking to you, are there kind of common problems that are manifested either in their operations, their data? Where do you see kind of folks start? Because I do want to recognize that you said, hey, there's a variety of solutions because you're more of this platform and single pane of glass, if you would.
Yeah, there is. And one of the challenges with digitizing your manufacturing operations is, where do you start, right? And you don't want to start too broad, right? You want to target a couple of key use cases, prove out value there before you scale the solution out. So if you think about a solution like Augmentir, we can impact safety, we can impact quality, we can impact equipment operations, we can impact maintenance and plant operations overall. Our customers typically start small. So they may start with a quality solution, connecting frontline operators to a quality management solution as a first point, because they see that as a easily demonstratable ROI, or they see that where human error or potentially manual processes, paper-based processes, are contributing to quality issues on the floor. So they may start there. We've had companies start with just this simple use case of permit to work or safe work permits. How do I ensure that the person I'm assigning this job is the right person to do the task, and they have the right skills or certifications or endorsements, or I have the right supervisors available to sign off on the work before it's being done? Certainly critical in areas of manufacturing like chemical manufacturing, where human safety is a big factor there. And in other cases, troubleshooting. So when a frontline worker runs into a situation where there isn't a documented procedure for that, it's I need to talk to someone, or I need to go to a bunch of different areas of resources to find what I need. That's just such a critical aspect of manufacturing that contributes to downtime. It contributes to product loss. When you think about corporate sustainability goals, companies are looking to reduce scrap, reduce rework. And so even a simple use case like troubleshooting, so companies always start somewhere, but usually they start in one or two use cases and then scale up from there.
And so you kind of used a few words that I think are interesting and important, but namely kind of around proving ROI easily. And so part of this is starting in an area where you're kind of willing to do tests. You kind of have an understanding of what ROI might exist, how you derive that ROI. My question would be, how long does it take? Like, what do your best customers ultimately look at? Because it may not always come down to or be as clear as cold hard dollars, but it could be things like improved safety, employee understanding, right? Happiness. Kind of even these types of metrics are important because manufacturing, by and large, has largely grappled with for the last decade these workforce issues you mentioned.
Right. You touched on a good point. For some companies, it's worker engagement and retention, which sometimes is difficult to measure, right? But if you think about the retention rates in manufacturing today, I mean, it's shocking how dramatically different they are today versus pre-pandemic, 2019, five years ago. So just being able to not only measure but impact worker engagement, which leads to improved retention rates, is enormous. Improving onboarding time for workers. We've had a customer improve their new hire onboarding time from 3 months down to 3 weeks. And so what does that do? What's the impact of that? That's obviously getting a worker productive faster, one, but it's also saving time for that subject matter expert who may have to, previously they were spending 3 months shadowing, workers as they were, getting up to speed and going through that onboarding process. It frees them up now. So getting workers productive faster. That's a huge goal. And then clearly goals around or ROI around, reducing quality defects, reducing safety incidences, and improving compliance, just improving productivity overall. It's shocking. We have a customer in the agriscience space, a huge manufacturing company here in the US, and their whole goal was if they could just get their workers to do what they're supposed to do every day, they would improve productivity by, I think they said 32, 33%. And why can't you do that?
Funny how that works.
Yeah, right. It is, right. And so that's standard work in manufacturing, right? But the problem is when you have an inexperienced workforce and a workforce that is entering production lines that are, potentially less skilled, it's not really their fault. It's just they don't have the skills needed. It's very easy to miss standard work procedures that have to happen. And so using a system like Augmentir, they can ensure that standard work is happening. And they're not even looking at optimizing everything. They're just looking at, can I do what I need to do? A preventative maintenance routine, a safety walkabout, operator rounds, do those things that ensure that operations stay running. It's a huge impact for these customers.
And is there kind of a case study or customer you can point to as we kind of like nicely wrap this up and kind of show a lot of the great work you guys are doing for the folks you serve?
Yeah, so we work with a lot of very large manufacturing companies, even down in the mid-market as well. But one company that it's a brand everyone knows is Colgate-Palmolive. Their products are everywhere. They had a corporate goal around sustainability and digital transformation. Within their corporation, they wanted to have paperless factories by 2025, and so they were able to adopt Augmentir a few years back. And in the first 30 days of using Augmentir, they demonstrated value in maintenance, in quality, and in production operations. They started with 2 sites and focused on safety and quality use cases only. But within, I think it was 9 months, it could have been 10 months. Within 10 months, they had rolled out to 40 plus sites globally.
Wow.
Multi-language support, both in their production mills, container, just across the board in their manufacturing facilities, as well as integrating to critical production systems, like ERP systems and learning management systems. Over 1,000 procedures digitized across safety, quality, and operations. Just huge rollout, and it was in support of their corporate sustainability goals. But again, kind of the pattern that I mentioned before, they started small with a couple of simple use cases, proved out that value, and then their ability to take that and scale that across their entire operations was enormous. And so, just a great use case. Obviously, they're a very large company, but certainly a solution where Augmentir is in complete support of their corporate sustainability and digital transformation goals.
Awesome. Well, with that, I'm going to jump a level up here to talk about the U.S. manufacturing industry, right? And I'd love the kind of unhyped, unvarnished, just real talk state of what is actually going on when you say domestic manufacturing.
Yeah, so it's a problem, right? So there is a study out just earlier this year. Deloitte and the Manufacturing Institute put out a study where, and this was updated from a study they did back in 2021, so they kind of updated it. But U.S. manufacturing is going to need as many as 3.8 million jobs, new employees by 2033, so in the next 10 years. And so there's a massive job shortage today if it continues. And a lot of this is around attracting and retaining talent. And so if you look at just today versus 2019, 5 years ago, job retention in the first 3 months in manufacturing was down from 90% to 50%. So people quit. Half the time, the first 3 months, they're quitting their jobs in manufacturing. So you've invested all this money in onboarding a new worker and they're just gone, right? That's a problem. Average tenure rate is down from 20 years to 3 years. So that's a problem as well. And one of the big problems there is loss of tribal knowledge. People that just know how a piece of equipment works or know what needs to happen, that knowledge is walking out the door, and frankly, it hasn't been digitized. So you can't use that as a sort of a corporate asset that you could use to train new workers coming in. Average time in position is what I think it was 7 years down to like 9 months. So manufacturers really need to invest in skills and training. They need to invest in strategies that support an evolving workforce. And so thinking about things like workforce flexibility, it could be flexible hours. It could, technology. Obviously, we're a technology company, so I always like to say that technology plays a huge role in this, and we think it does. But I think it goes beyond just technology, and being able to support a workforce that is more we hear this from our customers. They want a team that is more a team of generalists, because you don't know on any given day if you're down 10, 15% in your capacity, your workforce capacity to meet those production goals. You need to put somebody on a line to operate a piece of equipment, and you need to make sure that they can either that they know those skills, or they can have technology that can help them, support and augment their understanding of machine operation, maintenance, whatever it is, while they're doing the job in the flow of work. And so a lot of that flexibility, I think manufacturers are looking at more of a skills-based organization, a skills-based workforce versus discrete job profiles and descriptions, and really looking at using technology as a way to augment workers over time, but continually upskill and reskill those workers, rethinking the traditional sort of training and onboarding that has existed up to this point.
Sure. And how can one address this? Because you said like part of the solution is technology, but another part might even be kind of, in high schools and vocational programs, being able to identify these skills, not necessarily where somebody is kind of specialized and they can kind of only do this one or two things, but over a couple of years, they have this breadth of knowledge and understanding, so they can be a bit more general and can slot into the various problems that exist when they get a manufacturing job. But like, how does one kind of address this? Because this sounds like a systemic problem.
Right. That's a great question. So there's a lot of efforts today down even in high schools and higher education to support, some people call it making manufacturing sexy again, but it's, there's a lot that goes in, if you look at modern manufacturing plants, there's a lot of technology there. There's a lot of skills that frontline workforces need that didn't exist 10, 20 years ago, right? Machine operations, robotics, there's a lot of, math and science and, data analytics that goes into that are jobs that frankly didn't exist, right? When our fathers were in manufacturing 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, who knew that those jobs would exist? And so part of it is instilling that early on so that people understand that there are, if you think about STEM related careers, there are careers in manufacturing that relate to that, right? So it is very interesting for folks that are, or for young folks that are coming into the space there. The other thing is companies really need to rethink how they are hiring and onboarding workers. You can't hire skilled workers that meet a certain criteria, maintenance tech level 2. You have to hire less skilled workers, and then you have to rethink how you are onboarding them, rethink how you're supporting and training them over time. And that's a fundamental change for HR companies or HR organizations within these companies. It's really a fundamental change, and they need to really be thinking about that, because
it's a great point.
They're not going to survive otherwise, right?
And so a lot of headlines around nearshoring. What does this mean, right? Because at a steady state, there's already a struggle in getting the right type of people, training them, retaining them. And now you're saying things like chips or pharma or whatever it is, batteries coming back. Are we about to kind of bury ourselves in demand that we frankly just can't absorb?
I think so. I mean, I think you're exactly right there. I mean, Deloitte, I think, came out with this, 65% of U.S. companies have already started, reshoring or nearshoring efforts. And I think 95% of companies are considering it if they haven't, done that yet. But still, the problem exists under the hood, right? You can say, I want to bring these back, but you need people here, right? And frankly, those don't exist. I mean, what's ahead of us in terms of job shortage is staggering. And if you look at, the answer isn't in AI in terms of replacing humans, right? Robotics are only going to do so much in terms of replacing humans in factories. And I think we've reached a steady state there, right? So we need to think more about technology to augment humans, make humans more productive, because the reality is manufacturers are going to be operating with 80% of the workforce that they need, right? They're going to be operating with 20, 30% of the staff that they, that they had 5-10 years ago. And that's just a reality. How do you do more with less? And yeah, that's certainly reality. And it's a combination of technology as well as corporate changes in how you're hiring and onboarding and training.
What you mentioned AI, and given kind of where we are, I'd be remiss not asking a bit about that. But what interesting tools or techniques have you observed in manufacturing as this AI wave has probably taken a stronger hold? Part of me says, hey, it actually started in things like manufacturing and transportation, industrial. But what have you seen as of late that's kind of piqued your interest or been like, oh, that's actually cool and impactful?
Yeah, so AI has a long history in manufacturing, right? Dating back to the late 60s in automation, warehousing, vision inspection systems. You can go down the line and AI is transformational in manufacturing. I think now we're entering a wave where AI, and again, this is our focus at Augmentir, where AI is going to be transformational and augmenting humans, not replacing humans. If you look back in history, it's all been about replacing the repetitive manual tasks that humans in factories were doing. I think we're entering an era where AI is going to be augmenting human activity. And one of the things, and we launched an aspect of our product, a generative AI assistant. We call him Augie, Augmentir Augie. So Augie is our Gen AI factory assistant. But if you think about the value in generative AI, and if you look at, behind Augie, what we have is a vertically trained large language model that is, secure and focused on the world of information for a particular customer of ours. So you take Colgate-Palmolive or whatever, right? It's just looking at their information, their world of information. But if you take a worker, imagine a worker having a digital assistant right next to them that your worker can say, I'm running into an issue here. I have a jam on the packer and I need to solve the problem, right? And they now have a single interface. They have access to a digital assistant that can say, here's a troubleshooting manual that can help solve the problem.
Yeah.
Here's how the problem was solved before. Here's a conversation between a subject matter expert and another worker just like you that solved this problem before. Or maybe you just need to connect with a subject matter expert because there's no solution to this. And here you go, right? Here's the 5 people within the organization, wherever they are globally, that can help you support this. So getting access to information, multi-language support, and then being able to make sense of the vast wealth of data that exists in a manufacturing enterprise and having that at the fingertips of a worker. I think that's truly transformational in manufacturing. And it goes along with, I think, the next wave of AI, which is, again, like I said, augmenting human work.
Mm. How should folks think about when we look at the current state of global manufacturing? There's a large share of it that is, whether you want to say mainland China, Southeast Asia, but Asia as a whole. And Asia has historically benefited from relatively inexpensive labor and or kind of government mandates to push automation into these industries to make them globally competitive. How does that impact kind of this renaissance around manufacturing here in the US? Is it, yeah, there are going to be people around, but where there's not people, we are going to have to automate. We are going to have to kind of be comfortable with the man plus machine future.
We absolutely have to be comfortable with that. And I think manufacturing in the US, probably a little bit behind. We work with a great bottling company here in the US, a very large bottling company here in the US. And you go into their factories, it's just fantastic. I mean, it truly is lights out manufacturing. Everything is automated. It's robotics. It is state of the art. And that's not common, right? It is not common whatsoever. And so it needs to be more accessible down to the mid-market manufacturing companies as well, which it isn't today, right? So there's a huge barrier in automation and robotics down in the mid-market manufacturing. That problem needs to be solved. But even when you go to the larger enterprise, it's not common to see what we see in our bottling manufacturer, to see that level of automation. It's not common. Now, humans are still needed, right? Maintenance is a key use case there. Even in a lights out operation, maintenance is still a critical use case. But I think we need to look at ways to make automation technology more attainable for the wide, if there's 80,000 manufacturing companies in the US down to, large enterprise, even down to the mid-market, we're behind in automation there across the board. So that technology needs to be more accessible for sure.
Mm. Well, I'm going to bring us home, Chris. I appreciate you kind of indulging us on a variety of topics here. but I have found myself kind of finishing up in a bit of a lighthearted way, doing what I call rapid fire. So I'm going to make 3 statements. I just want your immediate response when you hear these things. Keep it to about 10, 15 seconds. First up, the CHIPS Act and the return of semiconductor manufacturing to the U.S.
Yeah, so this is gonna be longer than 15 seconds. So
Let's
I'm
do it.
I'm all for strengthening American manufacturing and supply chains and resiliency. The problem is that the funding appears to be going towards like the largest chip manufacturers. So the companies that have lost out over the past 20, 30 years to Samsung and TSMC. So we make what 10, 12% of the chips in the world today versus 40% in the 90s. I think what it appears to be missing out on is the smaller companies, in helping those smaller companies, the ones that can provide a level of innovation that maybe hasn't been seen before, and that may spearhead the kind of the future of industrial work and manufacturing. I think that's the part that possibly is missing in that.
Stu, your most important daily habit.
My most important daily habit is the few minutes I get with my daughter in the morning as soon as she wakes up. Right after she wakes up every day, before the chaos of the day starts. That's the most important daily habit that I have, for sure. Yeah.
And your favorite thing about fall?
Fall. So I live in upstate New York, so beautiful weather here in the fall. It's one of the best seasons here for sure. So we're looking forward to that. Where the fall looks like it appears to be starting already here. So I'm definitely looking forward to that, and also bird migration. So I'm an avid bird watcher, and spring and the fall are the times to be in upstate New York, where the migratory birds come through. And so really looking forward to hopefully finding some time to get out with my family and do a bit of bird watching here in the fall.
Awesome. With that, Chris, appreciate you joining us, sharing your story, the Augmentir story, as well as indulging in some industry talk.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. Follow us at dynamo.vc for all the latest episodes. We'll see you next time.